Savage Warriors, released in 1995 for MS-DOS courtesy of Mindscape and French studio Altriad Concept, which would later be redubbed Callisto Entertainment, maker of those nightmare creature things. I guess the history is a bit convoluted if the Wikipedia entry is anything to go by. And speaking of which, here is another rubbish fighting game on MS-DOS to capitalize on the whole fighting game craze for those who couldn't afford a proper video game console to play these things on. I don't know, maybe they were wowed by the magazine ad for this thing that was apparently a thing once upon a time. I say apparently because I don't recall ever seeing this ad before, and I used to frequent Computer Gaming World on a regular basis once upon a time. Maybe I did see it and completely forgot about it, which is probably a good thing because everything on this page is complete and utter bullshit anyway, and thus does not deserve further mention here. So you start the game up and you have a rather slick animated introduction setting up the game's premise with some bits that... You're then taken to the main menu, which gives you an option for a one-player game, your arcade mode presumably, a two-player game, your versus mode presumably, watching the credits, and your options. And that's it. You can play this game with a keyboard or a joystick. The keyboard gives you two preset configurations for you to choose for each player. You have no button customization feature otherwise, so have fun pressing enter and shift to punch and kick the other fellow while using the arrow keys to move around. Yes, it is every bit as awkward as it sounds, and no, it does not work all that well. This is one of those cases where a joystick or gamepad is highly recommended to play properly, and even that is only a marginal improvement, as we'll get into soon enough. So anyway, it's a 1-on-1 2D fighting game where you pick from one of 10 Savage Warriors vying for supremacy. The HUD is confusing at first because you land blows and the meter below the character mugshot doesn't go down, and it takes a couple seconds to realize that the meter doesn't indicate health, it's actually a stamina meter of sorts that goes down whenever you do one of your character's 2 or 3 special moves. Your health is actually measured by the mugshot itself, which slowly fades into nothing as you take a pounding, and once you have an empty box, you are defeated. Well, it's different at least. You could also land blows to disarm an opponent's weapon, depriving them of some special attack or whatever. It really has no general effect on gameplay otherwise. There are also interactive elements in some stages, such as hooks you could hang onto or platforms you could stand on. It's not much, but it's something different at least. Doesn't play a huge role, but it's something, I guess. Whenever a fight ends, you're treated to a replay of the fight that plays out in a horizon where all of a sudden we have 3D cameras on here. Holy balls, a 3D fighting game tease. That'll never work. Savage Warriors as a fighting game is a bit of a mess. There are some interesting ideas here. A 2D fighting game where you could actually change the camera's perspective to give a slightly overhead view or reduce everything to fit a tiny square screen. Options that I assume are for those who want something that works best with their PC specs back in the day, but something that is more of a curious feature to fiddle around with these days. But the core gameplay is where things truly fall apart. As mentioned before, your controls comprise movement keys, a punch key, and a kick key, none of which you could customize via button remapping. Special moves are typically performed with quarter circle-esque motions, with some oddball movements here and there, but attempting to pull these off with either a keyboard or even a joystick doesn't always work as well as it should. For comparison's sake, I could pull off moves in DOS ports of Mortal Kombat and Super Street Fighter II Turbo with the keyboard just fine once upon a time. And I really wish I could play the latter one of these days because that's a bit of a treat. At least I remember it being a treat. But instead, I'm playing Savage Warriors, a game that operates under the bare minimum requirements of a fighting game. You have stereotype caricatures to choose from, you have a couple specials per character, collision detection, hitboxes, things of that nature. Aren't exactly perfect at times, but it's usually on point more often than not. The idea with interactive elements in stages, hooks to hang on to, things of that nature, inconsequential and usually have no real benefit to gameplay. Weapons, which you can arm or disarm or remove from an opponent's person with enough hits, sound like it could make for some fun gameplay, but really doesn't amount to much. I mean, the most you could say about Savage Warriors is that it's at least somewhat playable. Top-notch quality fighter? Of course not. Hell, I wouldn't even qualify this as above average. But it is somewhat playable, to a degree. And that has to be worth something, right? Right? I guess it's worth mentioning the game does have cheats, a hidden gore mode that adds red blotches and nothing more, a couple hidden characters and such. Does that make for a better game? Not really, but there's something there. I don't know what's there, but it's something, I guess. So Savage Warriors is done in this voxel style where everything looks like a pre-rendered pixelated pile of pictures and stuff. This would have been considered cutting edge back in the day. I mean, I would have been wowed by this had I played this back in the day. Kinda, sort of, probably not. But nowadays, you know what, I'd be hard-pressed to call this a bad-looking game. Sure, the character designs are a bit uninspired and somewhat ugly looking, including some that are decidedly what the kids call 90s. The fuck do they know? The backdrops are kinda generic looking things with names like The Wood. Just the one apparently. But all that aside, while the in-game stuff isn't all that great, I do like the presentation otherwise. The character select screen is a gallery of portraits with the final boss arm pointing in your chosen champion, the red dude about to replay the fight that just took place. It does show some extra effort that could have been put into making a better fighting game, but there's a charm that wouldn't have existed otherwise. And there is a part of me that kinda dug the 3D replay things. I kinda wish you could play the game in this fashion. I kinda wish you could play a better game for that matter, but it is what it is. I tried. Also of note is the sound output, which comprises generic rock medleys that are generic sounding and completely forgettable, crunchy sound effects, and some truly atrocious vocal bits. There's nothing else to add to this. It sounds like noise and that's all there is to say about that. Overall, Savage Warriors on MS-DOS is not a great fighting game, let's be honest. I'd be hard-pressed to call this even good, but at the same time though, there's stuff here that I actually do like. None of it involves gameplay, but the presentation intrigues me, the opening animation amuses me, the different camera views is kind of funny, the 3D replay of the fights is interesting, I guess? There is some care put into this thing that I can't help but admire. Probably in the wrong places, but still, it's something, I guess. I suppose the reality is that Savage Warriors had something going for it that maybe in more capable hands would have been more fully realized, and that ad that was put out might actually be honest for once. As it is, the most you could say about the game is that it's somewhat playable. It's not a total lost cause, just a partial one. And at the very least, there is a certain charm to it that makes it almost endearing to a fault. Would I play this again over something like Sango Fighter or One Must Fall 2097? Probably not. But at the very least, I can say that I've played worse, far worse, than Savage Warriors. It's on GOG.com if you want to give it a shot, though wait for a sale before you do because honestly, you have much better fighting options out there. This isn't terrible, but it's not good either.